and Kaladze to this conversation, and to say thank you so much for making the time to be here with us and to share some stories about your journey with us. I also wanted to acknowledge everybody else who's taken some like having their lunch with us this afternoon and participating in this conversation. I, as I'm sure that you know, is the convention now, will ask the people who are in our audience, so to speak, to keep your cameras off when we're in the interview part of the conversation. And then when we come to the question and answer part, if you're comfortable doing that, please do turn your video on so we can we can see you, or if not, you can also put your question into the chat. Is that what we're doing? We're doing that, aren't we, Melissa? Sorry, I'm just sort of going back and forth. It's our first one,
Yes.
so we're kind of
That's what
figuring it out as well. So thank you so much for sharing your amazing film with us. I watched it myself yesterday with a group of friends and neighbors. We did a little backyard screening, and I'm very happy to report we stayed up until 1 o'clock in the morning talking about this film. It unearthed such meaningful conversations in that group of very diverse people. Some were artists, some were, my mother was with us as well, and different people from the creative sector. And really, I cannot congratulate you enough for making such a moving and thoughtful film. The Letter is a film about a family relationship around a conflict with their grandmother, and I feel like it is a microcosm of this of almost every situation that so many African families find themselves in, and it speaks so universally to the conflicts that people find themselves in the family. I'm just very curious about what brought you to this story, Maia and Chris. How did you discover that this was a story that you wanted to tell?
Yeah, thanks, Shiba, so much for having us. And we're so glad to finally be to be part of NBO properly in a kind of virtual space. But the letter for us initially started now, I would say 8 years ago, the journey. And we had read a children's story about Mekatilili Wamenza. And Mekatilili Wamenza, for those of you who don't know, was a female freedom fighter from the coast. Who fought against the British. And when we were reading this children's story, we were really intrigued by her story and about, like, we weren't able to find a lot about her and her journey. And so we initially went on a mission back to the coast, which is where my family is from, my father's side, to try and find more information about her. And as we were talking to a lot of elders who were giving us her story, a lot of elders were then also saying, there's this issue that's currently happening at this time, and this is what we're going through. But as you know, kind of also, when it comes to things around witchcraft, there's stories of people's stories of stories, but no one actually were giving us any personal issues that were happening from themselves and their families. So we then were having this issue where we'd filmed over 2 years, but we had a lot of there's a lot of interviews and a lot of social things, but there was nothing intimate and emotional. And funnily enough, we came back to Nairobi and we were looking for a Giriama translator, and someone had put us in touch with Kaladze, who then came home. And as he was watching the footage of all these old people, his face was starting to change. And eventually then we realized that he was going through the same thing at that time with his nyanya, who was being accused of being a witch by her stepsons, and this was being put on a cousin's Facebook group. So our then journey, kind of with Carissa, then began at that time, where we were spending a lot of time together, we were understanding each other and building a relationship, and then able to then go and visit Nyanya at home in Kaloleni. That's how it began.
Wow. And I just would like to come over to you, Kaladze. Welcome to the conversation. Kaladze is his artist name. His other name is Carissa, is how we know him in the film. And I'm really curious, Carissa, what was it like for you, just being approached by these guys and having them put it to you that they wanted to pursue your family story in particular? Uko kwa mute bado.
right now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, mnanisikia?
Mm.
Okay. Iko sawa sasa?
Iko sawa kabisa.
Okay. So, yeah, kama Maya alivyosema, yeah, napenda kuwashukuru sana. We thank you Nairobi Festival kwa kuweza kutuhost siku ya leo. So the journey, like she said, it's like 8 years old. So mimi tulianza na mambo na translations. So I was just a translator, wakiniletea hizo files, mimi na translate. But kusikiza hizo stories, ndo nikaona hizi vitu zina happen pia huku kwetu. So ikanibidi sasa liingiwa na ile motisha ya just want to change what is happening in our places. So it was not so easy because kuwaleta kina Maya, bringing them into our family, and it's something, these are usual family issues. So just bringing people into your family and then discussing their issues, kidogo huwa inakuwa, like my grandma, she had not accepted them at first, but we had to let them in our family, wazoelewe, getting to know my family, my nyanya, my aunties, my uncles. So before, it took time for them to, like my family to open up. Yeah. So it wasn't an easy road first for the family to open up to them, getting to know them, until Maya and Chris became like our family, like my brother and sister pale kwa familia yetu. Because my grandma alikuja akawazoea. At first she was like, wanaleta hawa watu, kwani wanafanya kazi gani hawa nini, something like that. So eventually waliweza kuwaelewa, na pia ndo tukaanza hiyo story sasa. Because kitu kilinifanya kueleza zaidi, it was just a Facebook message in a group which started all this. Because me, I didn't know about the story. So I knew it while I was in Nairobi. So while I was translating, I was like, this thing is happening even in our home, and in many communities it's happening. So I think that is what made me kuanza kufuatilia zaidi. So I brought them home. I asked Nyanya about the story, and it was happening to the other elders in Malindi also. So Nyanya was like, hey, unataka kunieka mimi na watu wanaambua ni wachawi. So she was like, hey, I don't want to be associated with this witchcraft thing, because me myself, I'm not a witch. Yeah. So after explaining to her pole pole, my aunties, my uncles, that's how the story now started and came through.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I would say that it was quite an interesting thing for us as well to notice that in the same way that you were mentioning, Maya, just showing the story, one of the people in the group of people I was watching it with, she herself had had her grandmother go through exactly the same situation of being accused of being a witch. So it seems like something that we really need to get to the heart of in our society. I would really love you to tell us a little bit, Chris and Maya, about the process. I mean, Carissa has explained a little bit about it, actually, about how you entered into his family and built that trust and connection between them. Again, the people I was watching the film with yesterday, a few of them who are not well versed with documentary were amazed that you were able to get to that level of intimacy with people, and they were actually surprised that it was a documentary and that these weren't people who were performing a role, because it felt, so close and so intimate. And so there's a big curiosity there about like what your process is. What's your magic? What's your magic?
I think, yeah, I'd say like 90% of it is probably just like being present and the relationships and that you develop, and then the other 10%, I guess, is figuring out the picture, the camera, the sound, the editing, and all of that other stuff. And yeah, I think just by spending so much time just kind of hanging out. After a week or two, you're just there. You of course you can never become invisible, but I think people's tendency to want to perform for a camera just
fades away.
You can only keep that up for so long, and that's the stuff we're really interested to be capturing. And a lot of those conversations that happened, or the moments we captured on film, we were part of a lunch or breakfast, or maybe that morning we'd walk with Kaladze to go visit someone who was interesting in Kaloleni, and I think we basically acquired, we captured about 300-400 hours of footage over the 6 years. And shooting for the first 2 years, where we were researching the story of Makatsalili and the Giriama uprising, and even Makatsalili being accused of being a witch by the British, and all of this other stuff that didn't even make it into the film itself, but it all informs the film. It was just a long process of editing that down and figuring out how we were going to make it play. And we ended up having enough moments that were so natural and real and pure enough that we could string together this whole kind of fascinating and complex and joyful and troubling story that we came across.
Yeah. Sorry,
go ahead. Yes.
No,
I
wanted to quickly add, just to that also, is that as Chris mentioned, is that you're there for 2, 3, 4 weeks, without the camera as documentary filmmakers. And that's the time where you're really bonding and getting to know people. And then it's after then you have that kind of sense of trust that then it's now when you kind of bring the camera out and you're able to really film and get those poignant and really truthful moments.
And also, if I'll add anything as well, just I think that the film really came together because Carissa, as you see, was I think just such he's very charismatic in his place in the family, but also he was, I guess, junior enough that he wasn't on any side, and friendly enough with everyone, and open enough, and not judgmental, non-confrontational. I think that's really what enabled people to really kind of drop their defenses in this kind of volatile kind of situation, dispute that was happening. But for us, because we didn't take any side and we didn't cast any judgment, I think that was really important in just getting people to feel they could be honest. And
I think that is a really important feature about this film as well. I think you gave all of the members of the family an opportunity to be heard and to be understood, and it didn't go into very simplistic tropes of who is good and who is bad, but rather a family negotiating their way through a complex situation. Did the story start? Do you feel like the story that you thought you were going to tell ended up being the story that you told, and what informed sort of how it evolved, if it evolved? And I'd love to hear from you as well, Carissa. Did you think this was the film that you were going to make, or that they were going to make, or was it? Did it change from what you thought it was going to be about?
Yeah. So maybe I can say that Chris and Maia had been true people to me. We've been communicating well. We've been working well with them. So they were yani wamekuwa watu wa ukweli kwa familia yangu. The truth usually ashames the devil. So when you are true with people also open up, and also they give you what is in their heart. So Chris na Maia wamekuwa watu ambao tunaweza enda nyumbani, tunakula pamoja with my family, we talk with the neighbors together, tunaenda Mangweni, we're going to meet the chiefs and everybody, the village elders, what we were meeting together. So the story turned out as I think as we expected. Yeah, although it was we had some challenges, like the way I said, like talking to auntie, going to uncle's place. Yes, it was the story was it was not an easy thing to open up. But at least people, they saw us, we were true people, and they came and realized Maia and Chris ni watu ambao wanaeleweka, ni watu ambao wamekuja kusaidia community yetu. So I think that's using that way. That's how people opened up, and that's how the story came out. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that also is that, you know, initially I think we were kind of looking at this kind of strange kind of historical documentary about Mekatilili, and we didn't really know what we were up against and what we were trying to do as our first. This is our first documentary experience making.
A big part of the opening as well, if I can just add, is that, you know, my grew up in Nairobi with her mom, and it was around the time we got married, 2013, that we were like, let's kind of have, like, even to know kind of whose Maya's relatives were down in Rabai, down in Kaladze, down in Mombasa. It was kind of like a mixed intention, I guess, as well, to kind of like reconnect with that part of your history.
Yeah, that and also and we're sorry, we're going all over the place. And then also musically, you know, especially kind of coming from very rich roots, especially the Mijikenda music. So that was also playing a role where we were just kind of exploring and researching anything possible around Mekatilili, her story and the culture, which was very rich. We were exposed to a lot of really incredible people and a lot of incredible dances and music, etc. And then also family-wise, yeah, because, you know, Clarissa's Nyanya was living right opposite the road from where my uncles and my family live in Kaloleni, which are them mushrooms. And so essentially it was getting to know that side of the family, as well as then spending time with Carissa and his Nyanya. And I think that also made it easier for Nyanya also to allow us into her home and into her story.
And yeah, in how it came to be the actual story and how that got shaped in the end, I think we were finding it really difficult to tell this kind of historical story of Mekatilili. We interviewed, we went and filmed the Mekatilili Festival that happens every year, that's run by the Malindi Cultural Association, and that's how we met a lot of the elders. And a lot of them kind of telling us how Mekatilili ended up being called a witch by the British. And in the end, like, even people who were speaking to young people now were not really aware so much how this woman fought and pretty much led the boycott to work on the settler plantations and I don't know, played such like a major role in the history. And we just found the fact that now, like, while originally it was the British that kind of demonized Mekatilili as a freedom fighter, now we found it so troubling that 100 years later, we've got like the young generation demonizing their own elders, and anyone that's kind of like following the traditional kind of Mijikenda, the anyone that follows the Kaya and being called witches. This kind of evangelical thing seemed to be going so crazy out of control that I don't know. We could either have made a social commentary documentary with interviews and people talking about that, but we found it a lot more interesting for us and powerful to actually spend time with an actual family that's going through this and just understand, yeah, like what it's actually like to be in that situation, rather than all of the political and like academic kind of things going on. And we felt like through this very personal story, like the politics would come out.
And so in making such a beautifully intimate film that drew us so close into this family's dispute, you managed at the same time to draw us into a conversation about something that is of like national and regional concern. And I'm really just wondering about when you began to realize that, if you began to realize that beyond this family's like the balance between telling this specific story and what impact you thought that telling this particular story would have on this issue as a larger issue. Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't realize that was it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think like we started, I think, with the big issue, and then came to realize like the most powerful, potent way to trigger conversations is by making it personal. Just because I think hopefully like the themes we're exploring, I think are like universal themes as well as national themes.
That's what I was going to say.
And you know, at least me living away from Australia, it made me really think about what is family, and seeing the power of the kind of wider community that happens here. Was a big thing to just explore.
Yeah, I think it was a matter of just figuring out how is also this kind of very emotional, very personal family story going to be able to reach people from all over the world. And I think that, you know, anyone who has a grandmother, anyone who has aunties and uncles who have these disputes within their family, no matter what kind of disputes, I think everyone was able to tap into this story also emotionally and put themselves in the story.
And coming to you, Carissa, ningependa kujua familia yako walichukua vipi hii film walipoiona ikiwa imeisha, iliwabadilisha vipi?
Kuna wengine the conflict, it grew more and more, because like my uncles, my uncle Furaha, you know, we were not in terms. Sometimes he was saying I'm the one who is making the family break because of the story, exposing it outside. And then there was a time when like some of my aunties were saying I'm exposing grandma, you know, something like that, like people will come and hack her. So those were the things that were happening like in the community. So like auntie had to go and report to the police and the chief so that grandma to be secure. When there's a time you saw in the film, she was being told to go to Nairobi, but she said she will stay. So those were the things that were happening around. But as here imeendelea, my uncle's Furaha family, bado we are still in conflict. Like they can't come to Kaloleni, to my grandma's place. And you know, grandma, she died on 2020. So they never even came for the burial. So, and there's his daughters, one of the daughter died just last year. So upon this happened, it was this year, yeah, we had the burial. So me, auntie, and my other cousin, we went to the burial. So they were still like, they couldn't talk to us, some of the family members. So I had like two cousins who like, they came, they said hi to us and they just left. But the uncle and auntie, they are still in conflict with us. But we are planning on, I think next month, we are going to have a family meeting. And I heard that the Uncle Fura family, they're coming home. So it's like we're going to have like a resolution, like a get together, people come and like forgive each other. So maybe we thank God for that. Maybe it's going to happen. Let's hope for the best. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear about your grandma's passing away.
Yeah.
And also about your cousin, I guess. I'm sorry about that as well.
Yeah, kabisa.
And actually, Shiba, just to add, Nyanya, just because a lot of people are like, oh, was she killed because of this matter of witchcraft accusations? And she wasn't. She passed away peacefully at all. So just to also let people know that there was no.
Yeah, she just died a natural death. Yeah, she was just seated outside. She was. They were preparing for her to get a bath, to go and shower. Then while they came back, they saw her. She was gone. So it was so sad.
I'm really sorry about that.
And also Uncle Furaha, you know, his daughter passed away, which was really unfortunate this year, as Kaladze said. But also what's happening now is that there's a kind of a new blame that's now being put on Kaladze's auntie, that she now made and the one that's now bewitching. So there's this kind of cycle that just keeps perpetuating.
And also to add to that, there was this pastor who was in the film. He just came there and he was saying that there are people who have done this mess are also came to witness it again. Like auntie and us, we've come to witness the death of our cousin. So it's like Nyanya left the witchcraft to us so that we could go on bewitching them. So those are the stories that were still going on in the funeral.
Those conflicts are so deep rooted, and they go on sometimes generationally. And I think one of the important things this film does is create an opening point for us to start to have conversations about these like generational conflicts that happen. But also something incredible that you did with this film was like make us look at a very violent and very ugly subject, but you did it without traumatizing us and without making us feel the pain. And I really, I would like you to talk to us a little bit about the choices that you made creatively around that, both like visually and musically. Maya, you are a musician and a very wonderful musician at that. And I'm just very interested about like the creative choices that you made, both in what you did sonically and visually to help us look at this really violent subject, actually.
And actually, this is a conversation that we really had a lot, you know, especially because when we were filming, you know, there was we had some interviews with a journalist, for example, who works together with the police, who was showing us all of these extremely violent photographs, you know, and disturbing photographs of people who were attacked, how they'd been killed by certain gangs. So for us, it was really a matter of, as you say, you know, it was a matter of telling this personal story of the Kamango family, but then kind of the chorus then being that you're understanding that there's other things going on, but not necessarily having to see it. And that was a choice that we made from early on. You know, even though people were saying, well, why don't you show, you know, because I know also in Kisi, there's a lot of hackings of elders that are going on. But that's not the way that we make films, and I think for us it was much more important to be able for people to just feel this family story and not be able to kind of see that a lot of the trauma that comes with it, if that makes any sense. And also, just one more thing before you add, Chris, is that also a lot of, you know, a lot of people ask us, well, what are the cops, what are the police doing about this, and why didn't you interview police and the government? And again, for us, it was important to be able to just show the family story. And it was a back and forth conversation as to do we do the interviews with the police or with the mortuary, as to, you know, but we decided against it. And this is what we had.
No, the one thing I was going to say, I think what helped shape it, we spent a lot of time kind of trying to obviously find support for the film and pitching the film to broadcasters, distributors, funders, and I don't know, became like pretty nauseated by a lot of the responses that we got. I think you either had people who said, "Oh, this isn't interesting. Maybe it's interesting for Kenya," but the others were like, "Oh, well, like the violence is really interesting," and there's that tendency for this Western gaze to be, I don't know, like exoticizing and just the issue of portraying violence and bodies and things like that. We realized early on that just had just the potential to turn the film into something else completely. And for us, I guess what we really realize is that the art of documentary is really the art of just creating conversations, and you know, it's been the conversations around the film that have been like the most interesting for us. And we did a whole series of screenings along the coast, at schools, churches, community centers, and even hearing about your conversation, Shiba, with your neighbors. It's like that's the film that's happening when people are sitting around talking. And if you if you steer it a certain way and you exploit people's emotions for cheap purposes, I think it kills that conversation. So no, it was important for us to be respectful to the victims and to the people involved in the conflict. And we're really strong about that.
And can you tell us something about how the film has been received in the community that it's made about, like the broader community at the coast, and also what sort of responses you've had to it when you've toured it, when it's played internationally? And
yeah, I think the impact screenings that we held at the coast were the most powerful, because, for example, so as Chris said, is that we were showing them in all these different locations, but what we were doing, because it was during COVID, is doing smaller screenings with different groups. So we had women, elders, youth, teachers, government people, religious leaders. And so just within these small little pods, the amount of information that we were getting from people who were coming in to watch the film didn't really know what to expect. Like, for example, in the youth one, I remember there was two things. There was one guy who actually had been one of the accusers of his father. And after watching the film, it was a really interesting turnaround that he was having, because he was seeing the light through the film and seeing his own family, but then also questioning himself and feeling, and he was starting to feel guilty himself. So all of that was then coming up, in the mediated session afterwards. The same with the young man who was a Boda driver, who essentially, like, after the film, was pacing up and down, up and down. And so, we'd ask him, are you okay? And what's going on? And he was saying that he had seen his father being hacked to death at the age of 5. But he's now a border driver, and also kind of essentially inciting a lot of the talk that comes within the group, which are around the coast at the moment. So that was really powerful to see that, and the conversations that happened around there.
And I think that the big thing was having Garissa there in the room. I think them being able to just like see Garissa coming from like a similar situation and being open and speaking about his own family and having a respectful conversation about that. Suddenly the stories that were coming out of people in those sessions, you really realize how many people but also what it takes to just break that ice and just allow us to they say, like, just sunlight is the best medicine, the best antiseptic. So why not just like talk about these things and
yeah, kabisa.
Well, we're very grateful to you, Carissa, and your family for allowing us so deeply into your space, and for allowing us as a way for us to talk about issues that we all, many of us, experience in our own families. The time has flown past, so I have to start asking the last questions. I can't believe it's already been 38 minutes according to my count. And so I'll just start. There's two little things there are two things I'd like to do. One is to get you to talk a little bit about the process of getting your film made from a producer point of view, just by way of leaving breadcrumbs for like the next young Kenyan filmmaker, documentary people who want to take themselves on this 2-year journey, 5-year journey, whatever number of years journey. So a couple of points about how you got your film made and how you got what the big sort of breaking points were that allowed it to get to the end. And then I'm going to ask if there's any questions from the members of our audience that you'd like me to take. And so you can put them in the chat, and I'll pick out 2 questions and put them to you after that. So first, on the producing, how did you get it made?
Yeah, I think DocuBox were key, because for us how it worked was we saw like an advert that DocuBox were putting out that they're looking for stories, and we then applied, and they then were able to give us like the small amount to begin just the research, which allowed us then to be able to travel, to be able to go and interview and spend time down at the coast. And then through that, then it was then now, how do you then figure out your story, and how can you put that on paper to be able just for other people to then, get excited. And I'd say that essentially from a producer's perspective, I think once you essentially know your very rough story, put it down on paper and create a deck, with the photographs that, let's say, you've taken and your research that you've done.
teaser.
And then, yeah, of course, then it's like, how do you then, put together a little teaser to be able to then also share? And then from then on, it's now, how do you find money to be able to sustain?
How do you find money?
How do you find money? This is a good question. And with this film, it was a bit tricky, essentially, because it was such a tricky subject when you're talking about witchcraft, especially where we're looking for money. Unfortunately, majority is internationally, especially for documentary, and it was a difficult sell, to be very honest, from the beginning. But as time went by, DocuBox were really supportive throughout with whatever they could then put in, whether it being both financially and creatively, and in terms of space, or in terms of if we needed anything or a screen. So they were fully supported from the beginning.
I think the most amazing thing on top of the financial support from DocuBox was just becoming part, I guess, of this like cohort of filmmakers who all came through the same program. And so Pete Marimi was shooting I Am Samuel, and we would see scenes that he'd been out filming, and that, I think, in a huge way kind of even inspired us to get more intimate with the way we were filming, and then we'd have something that we'd bring to the group, and we'd get their critical feedback. And it's just like being with people who are in the exact same like situation is so important, because when you're making a documentary the first time, like you have like you have so little idea about where it's going and how you get it made, and over 6 years you kind of lose sight and you lose hope so many times, and you just have to keep getting up and trying. So I think having that like group, Sam Soko, Tony Kamau, Philippa was working on New Moon, just Zizi Kimundu, like being inspired by these amazing kind of Nairobi-based filmmakers was a big part of it. And Judy and DocuBox kind of exposed us to the international kind of festival documentary circuit, and we were lucky enough to get to attend IDFA, which is in Amsterdam, and they have the IDFA Academy. In Toronto, there's the Hot Docs Blue Ice Lab. And there we met mentors who also looked at our footage and were able to give us feedback, and people who we came to work with on the film in the end. Ricardo Acosta, who's a Cuban editor, was our mentor in Toronto, and we were able to bring him to Kenya, and he worked on the film and helped us kind of craft the story, which I think for us was the hardest bit, like the editing. How do you take 300 hours of chaotic footage and make it into a like comprehensible, coherent story, piece of work?
Yeah, it took a lot of time.
And he also convinced Maia to work on the score, which like all of my trying to get Maia to sing in the film was futile. But he convinced her, thankfully. Yeah, that's how we got it made.
Yeah, and actually, just to quickly answer your question that I forgot about the music, just very briefly, is for me what was really important, and for all of us, I think, was how can we be kind of Nyanya's like guardian throughout the sonic landscape, that the kind of the guardian of the elders in terms of sonicking. So I think that's what we were really working towards for the soundtrack, and was able to collaborate with this amazing mentor, I would say, from Canada called Ken Meir. Who was incredible. So I think that's how it all came together.
So I'll pick now on the, thank you so much, guys. I'll just pick on the two questions that I'm seeing here in the chat. James Murua, immediately after giving me flowers and saying I asked all the questions, then has asked about DocuBox. How important is the existence of DocuBox to the documentary filmmakers in this part of the world? And I think that you already began to answer that, but I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit more, and we can absolutely give DocuBox a plug here.
Definitely. I think DocuBox, and I think just the people behind, like Judy Kibinge and Mudamba, and the people behind DocuBox have really been able to create a space where it's become a family. You are a family, you're able to go there with whatever you have in terms of queries. They also get excited about different projects and about different people, and what is it that we're looking for as Kenyan filmmakers? How can we bring people in, experienced people in, to be able to teach about masterclass in editing or in so they are fundamental for, I think, Kenya's documentary.
The letter wouldn't have been made without.
I think it's fair to say that the Kenya film scene has a before and after DocuBox, photo session. It's like before, and not just in documentary, though significantly there, but there's definitely a before and after look to Kenya with DocuBox. And there's a question from Stephen Dongo who says, is there an intention to monetize on the documentary? And how does the Letter production team plan on recouping the production costs?
That's a good question, Stephen. I don't think we have recouped the money yet in terms of what was spent over the 5-6 years, but what we are now doing is essentially, like, for all the film screenings and things like that, we are able to then get, like, little monies in, and then between us and the family and Carissa, we split it 50-50, and that's important for us because essentially this is Carissa and his family's story, and I think now the letter is still showing at festivals like NBO, and it's also gonna be showing in other parts of the world. So for us, it's just a matter of how do we keep getting this story out, and also then how do we then like now we're talking to different distributors about potentially going what's it called? I've got baby brain.
Broadcast, no?
Broadcast. Thank you very much. So we're still in those conversations, and hopefully we can sell the film.
And we've had to learn this for the first time,
Yeah.
because we didn't initially get any kind of sales agents who picked up the film when we premiered, or distributors. So we ended up just having direct conversations with some broadcasters, and then you get into a whole kind of tangled web of what territories and who does this. And thankfully, we finally found a sales agent that is able just to deal with all of that while we make our other films. And I think the big areas to hopefully recoup are broadcast. It looks like we may have missed some of that happening, but we're speaking to hopefully
a couple of different people,
a UK broadcaster, US broadcaster, and we don't want to jinx it.
Well, we have our fingers crossed for you completely in that, and I'm sure that we'll do everything that we can to help get the word out about the film as broadly as possible. It's still showing until 6 p.m. today, and so it would be great if people go out there and spread the word to your friends and family, and really encourage them to watch it while we have it online. And especially since they can do it free in Kenya at the moment today, as a virtual at our virtual film festival. And so I just want to give you a chance to make any closing comments as we bring the discussion to an end, although I could talk to you guys for another 2 hours easily. And in your closing comments, just let us know, how do you think that this film has changed you guys as filmmakers? And Carissa, how has this film changed you and your life, and what you're planning to do next?
Oh, Carissa, you're on mute, Nafkili. And go ahead first, yeah.
Okay. So it has changed my life and my community also, and also like the impact project that we were doing. We met up with the chiefs and the village elders around the areas where it was intense. So like when we came through, we told them that it is their duty now for them to participate in changing their community. So the chiefs and the youth, they decided that they'll be having like awareness programs every now and then. So like like just the other day, there's the chief from this place, it's called Dungicha. So the chief told me that there are some elders who the family had thrown them away, like 14 elders. They had been, the earlier had been accused. They went to the Kiapo. Kiapo is like the, what do you say? The oath. They went and took the oath, and then they were found out they were witches. But the community accepted them back with their families. So now they are in the families. So it's like in the past, the elders, when they were found to be witches, they were taken to the shelter houses. So now the community has taken them back to their families, and at least it's now the view, how they usually viewed the elders, now it has changed. So it's upon them for them to change. Yeah, so and any addition I can say that in life we have to be persevere. Yeah, we can't just say a person is a witch and maybe the youth around here, they have no employment, so they take witchcraft as an excuse because they don't have employment, they don't know what to do. So it's like they're stressed out. So at least awareness programs, they need to be there, and also like they need to come together and also like try to benefit for their community, because it's not about us only, it's about the whole humanity. Yeah.
And just to quickly add to that, I think, as Kaladze says, is that this is still happening now. And I think it's just a matter of just really raising that awareness about the issue. I mean, it's so funny that now that, people who know us are sending us all these different newspaper articles and posts, because in Kisii, Sokos actually sent us in Kisii, it's actually now there's a lot of widows that now are being accused of being witches. So I think it's now just a matter of just being aware as Nairobians and figuring out how is it that we can all, play some small part to try and figure out how we can actually at least raise the conversation and put it into a much more kind of national light. That's number one. For me personally also is that, from my coastal roots, being a Nairobi baby, this film made me, just really showed me so many things and inspired me in so many ways. And I learned so much, both from Karisa and his family, and from, just being Rabbi Mijikenda. A lot was learned, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, I guess because it was such a personal journey, I guess, for both of us. Like we can't separate the film from our lives and our lives from the film. It just became, and still is, just like, I guess, a huge part of what we do. Especially, I guess, for me personally, coming from another country, being here for 14 years, I guess it's been my, I guess, like you could say, like my crash course on like family, I don't know, beef. Kaladze amenifundisha Kiswahili. It's been my shule kwa lugha, my shule kwa dini, shule kwa kila kitu. So like everything has been, everything we learn on this, we're carrying on to everything else we do.
Yeah.
Maya's released albums that have been inspired by experiences, and it's taught us just so much about, like, humanity, people, and how we're all together.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to call it there if we're going to have any faithfulness to our commitment to time. But this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so very grateful to you guys for making the time. I'm so grateful for you for making the film, actually. Like, this is the thing that I'm most grateful for, but really for giving us time with you, and for letting us have some insight into your world, and to thank you so much for all the inspiration that you're continuing to pour into the world. We're very, very grateful for that. And so
Thank
we
you.
appreciate you, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Shiva.
much.
Thank you, NBO.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, everybody who came to join us in the conversation today. The film is still showing until 6 o'clock, as I said, and then there is also going to be, a whole program of films for the next 10 days. This is just the beginning. There will be a screening bonanza on Saturday, where all the films will be available again for people to watch them who've missed them. But I'm trying not to talk about that because I want you to watch them sooner rather than later. Let's do the sooner rather than the later thing, Kenyans. Yeah. So thank you so much, and much love to all of you. Asanteni.
Thank you.